Video games, the great big world held in the palms of our hands. But let's take a closer look at this. What is a video game? A video game is a game played by electronically manipulating images produced by a computer program on a television screen or other display screen. So now you know what a video game is, but how do they work? So to put this into the simplest terms that I can, an image, decision, or action will appear on the display screen, and the player is tasked with appropriately responding to it. So now you know what one is, and now you know how it works. But how are they influential? How do they influence people? Well, before we ask this question, let's narrow down the search a little bit. Let's focus on teens, the group of people that are most influenced by video games. According to Francis E. Jensen, a professor of neurology, the teenage brain is not just an adult brain with fewer miles on it. It is a paradoxical time of development. These are people with very sharp brains, but they don't know how to use it. So, to put this in simpler terms, the teenage brain is akin to that of the adult brain, with the same sharpness and capability, but teenagers don't know how to use those things exactly. And that's why they're so impressionable, or able to be influenced so much more easier than an adult would be. So now how do video games exactly influence the teenagers? Video games have a huge impact on teenagers' lives. From the moment they wake up in the morning to the point where they can't stay up any longer, video games are influencing the minds of teenagers. But the ways that it changes their mind is what is truly special. According to the American Psychologist, the official peer-reviewed academic journal of the American Psychological Association, playing video games, including violent shooter games, may boost children's learning, health, and social skills. Boom. We've already named three major things that video games are influence. Three things that video games influence in the teenage brain. But how does playing video games exactly do all three of these things? Well, first we have to look into the brain. According to the University of Rochester Medical Center, the adolescent brain is very different than that of an adult. The rational part of the teen's brain isn't fully developed and won't be until the age of 25 or so. In fact, recent research has found that the adult brain and the teenage brain work very differently. Adults think with the prefrontal cortex and the brain's rational part. This is the part of the brain that responds to situations with good judgment and awareness of long-term consequences. Teens, however, process information with the amygdala. This is the emotional part. In a teen's brain, the connection between the emotional part of the brain and the decision-making center are still developing, and not always at the same rate. That's why teens have an overwhelming emotional input and can't later explain what they were thinking. They weren't thinking as much as they were feeling. Teens are easily influenced because they go off of how they feel on a certain subject and not how that same subject may affect them later on. For example, with a vape commercial, you see the bright and shiny colors with happy people. A teenage brain would look at the happy people and want to feel the same happy emotion rather than think about what the actual product is. In the same sense, teens wouldn't care about what the product is and what the consequences are if they think and feel that they would be happier and more content with the product. So, teens are easily influenced. But how do video games influence teens? Well, remember when I said how teenagers act on more emotion than adults do? That's exactly what video games are meant to do. If you look at the most recent decade's most influential games, you'll notice a pattern. Take Minecraft, for example. Everybody knows what Minecraft is, or you have at least heard of it. Did you know that what the player count of Minecraft is? 112 million players per month. Every month, 112 million people get on Minecraft and play. Why? Because it's a game of creation. You get to build anything you want. If you can imagine it, you can make it come true. Take another popular game, such as GTA 5. This is a game where there are literally no laws. There are no restraints on what you can and cannot do. So why are teens attracted to these games? Because they send out emotional messages. They have a message of freedom. What teen doesn't want to be free of their current situation and go and do whatever they please? This message of freedom spans throughout all of the greatest video games of the decade. Teens want to be free and experience these things. If they can't do it in real life, where can they go? Video games. Video games allow teenagers to explore the things that they've always wanted to and be the person they want to be. This gives them the happy feeling that teens look for. Because of this feelings, teens are more likely to be influenced by the video game. They want to get that feeling again and are willing to do what the game says and perform like the characters do. That craving for that feeling can create a whole world of consequences, both good and bad. So teens are influenced by video games based on feelings. And those feelings create great games. And great games influence teenagers. You now know that teenagers think with a different part of the brain than the adults do. Also, the great video games rely on using the teen's brain against them by manipulating what it is that a teen wants. By playing the video games, teens are involuntarily being influenced daily, being influenced to do whatever it is that the game is doing. Video games influence teens daily and will continue to do indefinitely. I'd like to leave you with a final thought. If video games influence the world so much, how long before the world begins imitating the video game?